Hello and welcome to the Dungeon Masters Guildhouse. So this is a weekly podcast where I, your host, Matthew Whitby, sit down with other creators of the DMs Guild and just chat about their process and their wonderful products. And I'm honoured as always to be joined by Imogen Gingell. Thank you so much for taking the time.
It's my pleasure. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, how are you doing today?
I'm all good. I'm good. I'm ready and raring to go. I'm excited.
I was saying this. So it's weird timing on this podcast in that this is, I believe, if I've done my maths correctly, this will be episode 26. So it means officially I've been doing it for half a year now, which is a bit of a milestone, isn't it? If you had asked me like half a year ago if I would still be doing this, I would be like, nah, I'll probably get like 5 in. And then it's sort of
well, congrats on the milestone.
Yeah, thank you very much. So no, this is a good sort of middle of the point way, and I'm happy to sort of bring you on. So my kind of first question straight off the bat then is for the people listening, what sort of products are you kind of known for on the DMs Guild?
Ooh, I was looking at my list and I realized I think I started out with quite a clear picture of what I would do, and suddenly I've managed to do a whole bunch of different stuff. But I think one of the what is the word, highest profile, I guess, things I've done is the School of Geometry, which is just a very small single subclass product for a wizard subclass that, to my surprise, managed to hit platinum bestseller, which was wonderful.
Well, I suppose that there is a fair bit of overlap of like the people who like the crunch of D&D mechanics and math enthusiasts. So I think it was
who knew?
The perfect sort of Venn diagram of people who like D&D and people who like maths.
So it's been good fun on that particular product. Talking with people who want to bring in real graph theory. For those who are listening who don't know, it's all about turning the kind of you take your prepared spell list and you use that to draw a network of all different connections, and you get sort of in-game benefits from the way you make those connections. And it's kind of wacky and it's mathematical. So if you're playing a wizard, you're probably the kind of person who
likes a little bit of maths. And then there's also looking again, so it's not only subclasses that you've kind of worked on, though. You kind of have worked across the board. Like you have some adventures, you have just like a real mix. Which product did you kind of start with? What was your first sort of foray into the DMs Guild?
Ooh, I think so. The very first one that I uploaded was nearly 2 years ago now. It was the Warlocks of Eberron : Pacts of the Dragons, which was another subclass product. So it was 3 subclasses, each themed after one of the sort of creator entities from the world of Eberron. And I got some great feedback on that. So it was kind of like, yes, I've got to do more.
Yeah.
And then after that, I kind of turned, first to, it was mostly bestiaries. So monster books. I did a couple of those now. And that's sort of where I started as a kind of a homebrew creator, and getting my stuff out there was with monsters more than anything else.
Because if I've done my research correctly, you had like the Dragon Above, like a Tumblr page,
right.
Just essentially was that essentially just a way to sort of get your homebrew out there, and eventually you were releasing so much homebrew for everyone that you were just like, oh, I could just saddle this, or I could create new content to just go straight up on the DMs Guild.
So I had this. You're right. This Dragon Above Tumblr blog, which is actually far, far older than it seems, because it kind of started out back when I was. So this was, imagine it's 2004 or 5 or something. It's the Wacky World of 3rd edition, and the Eberron campaign setting had just come out. You're going to hear Eberron a lot.
Yeah. Well, that's going to be one of my questions going down the line. But 3.5.
Yeah, so when Eberron first came out, you know, there was a really good community on the old Wizards of the Coast message boards. And I'd started on there doing a kind of challenge to myself. And it was a sort of a monster of the week thing where, you know, I wanted to just put aside time. And every week I would make a new 3.5 monster. I put it on the forums. And it was good fun. And I kept that up for years and years and years. So I started putting those on a website. And I think I called it was the Eberron Bestiary website. And then I kind of started doing more content that was not monsters. So I renamed it into the Dragon Above. And that kind of sat on the internet for a few years and sort of drifted away while I was, for a few years while I was sort of busier, I suppose, during sort of the 4th edition era. So I didn't do as much then. But then 5e came along and I started playing a lot more D&D again. I was like, right, let's start again.
Bring it on back.
And the rest is history, I suppose. So yeah, the Dragon Above for 5th edition started going, and then I thought, right, I've got to put these together in a book. And I did. And that one's the Codex Sybaris, for which there are 2 volumes now.
Yes. Was it like after the sort of the success of the first one, you just, or it's like the sort of the rolling stone of more ideas, of the ideas you maybe couldn't fit in the first one, or the sort of, because again, it seems like, again, everything you've sort of thrown out there has been very, very well received and stuff like that.
I know it's yeah, so I mean, it was I think I always knew, well, I wanted to get the first one out there because that was the Codex Sybaris one, the Morning and Madness volume was, I think that was the personal challenge, is I want to get a sort of a complete volume out. So as I was doing that, it was sort of a case of going through the old archives of things I'd made in 3rd edition or 4th edition, and some of the new ideas I'd had in 5th as well, just get a good cross-section of my favorite stuff, stick, I think it's around 30 of them in one thing, and kind of try, I guess, doing enough to draw a line under it. Because I think that's one of the things that's difficult with these, or at least I've found is difficult with when you're putting together sort of compilation or anthology stuff, is that you've got to know when to stop.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was kind of like the personal goal. Let's get one out there.
I mean,
and I think I always had the sort of the thought in the back of my head is like, this is not the only one I'll do. You know, maybe if I get enough good ideas, I'll leave them for the second one, and whenever I get around to finishing that.
I mean, it is something weird about the sort of creative process, that as you're creating, it gets easier to create more. And like, was it Project Bloat, or just like not Project Bloat, Project Expansion is probably a nicer term. But like, yeah, what starts out as like, oh, you know, maybe just like I'll put 15, 15 creatures in this bestiary, and next thing it's like 20, and then it's 25, and then it sort of expands out. So yeah, it's a tough thing to sort of know when to say, no, this is a 30 is a nice round number. It's like one for every day of the month.
Yeah.
And then I guess my next question then is, so when did that shift into adventure writing? Because the Across Eberron series of adventures, you were the first one.
Yes. So, oh wow. So I've been, how much of the history of Across Eberron? So the Across Eberron kind of started as a kind of a community project that we wanted to put together to go alongside the Adventurers League Eberron adventures. We thought, let's get a few friends and creators together and have our own run at it. So it was spearheaded by Wayne Chang, who is known for, well, he's in the Manifesto podcast, if you're an Eberron fan. And he's the producer of the Exploring Eberron book with Keith Baker that is due for release.
Any day now. Or just...
Well, once it's gotten through all the kind of approvals, it's this close, yeah. So he, wanted let's do a community adventure path, and he got together with a couple of others to start an editing team and put together a few ideas, and they asked if I would write the first one, which I was thrilled to be asked, and also it's kind of scary to kind of start off that bigger project, but yeah, so I can't remember if I'd written March of the Colossus before Fight and Forgotten. I don't know, but I didn't have a whole lot of experience at that point kind of writing adventures for other people.
Yeah.
So that was a learning curve, and I'm really happy with how it turned out, but and well, I mean, like it's gotten to gold bestseller, and the whole series is doing fantastically well. But it was so much fun as a kind of as a learning experience as much as a creative experience.
So I guess they're sort of touching on that then. So how did writing, obviously March of the Colossus, a product that you sort of wrote by yourself, to being the first product in a long adventure chain that is, I guess had like a project that has a producer role essentially. It's a sort of like an uptick in not professionalism, but no, maybe professionalism is the right word, but it's like there's much more people involved. There's more sort of gravitas to the whole situation. And how did you find like navigating that adventure writing process?
It was. I think I only have kind words for that kind of process, because I think there's a lot of fun in collaborating with other people, and the kind of instant feedback is, well, not instant, but kind of pre-publication feedback you can get on your work is so valuable. And I really think that when you have an editor, or sort of a dedicated editor or a project producer who can look over a thing and has sort of a broader vision of the whole thing, it really, as you say, lends to the sort of professionalism of what you're building, and I think that really shows in the Across Eberron series, is that we've put together this whole 13 episode arc that has this interwoven sort of structure.
It's on par with the official D&D sort of Adventure League chain. It's the same sort of quality of a product, but you guys have not as more freedom than you do in the sort of CCC product or the Adventure League thing of just being able to, like, well, we can go wherever we want. We can tell the story that you kind of want to tell.
Yeah.
I guess, okay. So I'm hardcore adventure designer, and I guess my big question is like, being the first step in the chain. How much did you have to sort of set up, or how much because obviously the things you set is this is the foundations of like what will go on to be the rest of the adventure. So how do you balance like what you want to explore in this adventure, or what needs to be a sort of like dangling story hook that someone further down the line?
Yeah, I think so. One of the goals that we sort of set out with in the broader project is that we wanted each of the 13 episodes to tell a self-contained story. So each one could serve as a sort of a one-shot or two-shot itself, without having to rely on the whole arc of the series. So there was sort of a conscious decision quite early on at the planning stage to kind of make it so that the kind of the meta plot was somewhat more of a framing device than an actual story, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
So we wanted to share some NPCs, and we wanted to have each of the 13 adventures be you go out to acquire an artifact for your patron.
Mm-hmm.
And the artifacts, all 13 artifacts, were gathered by the patron, the same patron. And at the very end, on the 13th episode, is when all of the artifacts come together and, you know, the big thing happens.
Yeah.
So there was quite a lot of freedom in what we each wanted to do within each of our single episodes.
So yeah, I imagine the best way to sort of imagine it is like a sort of each adventure is an individual puzzle piece. And and obviously it's self-contained, and obviously once you have all the artifacts, it then transforms, you know, like Megazords up into, you know, the final episode.
Yeah. So I think in terms of, we were each given sort of in our writing briefs, there were a few ideas set aside for us. You know, you might want to do this, this, and this. Mm-hmm. We were each given a location and the idea of an artifact, and this shared set of NPCs and this shared world of you are adventurers with this guild. Off you go.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I think that's one thing that we have talked a lot about in the sort of the feedback we've got as we prepare to do season 2, is maybe for the next one we'll look at interweaving the episodes a bit more, dropping some of the story hooks from the final episode a bit earlier. So it's I think it's been a fun project in that way, because we've learned a lot about the process of building adventure paths, as well as the process of building individual adventures.
I mean, on the right, I off the top of my head, you know, I can't think of anything similar on the DMs Guild, like, you know, a community-funded adventure chain. So again, it's very fitting in Eberron that you guys are sort of exploring uncharted terrain, and you're sort of forging the path. And obviously, yeah, with each, you know, making it seasons, you know, the fact that it's such a success that you guys can come back and, you know, learn from the first thing, it means, yeah, I'm excited for the kind of next chain whenever it sort of sees the light of day.
Yeah, me too. It's gonna be good fun.
So I you know, actually, I've realized my podcast has kind of taken on like a unofficial format of like a bunch of sort of introductory questions, just learning about your, you know, catalog of like products and stuff like that before moving into like my stereotypical flow of questions. But I do have my one last question, is, and I kind of mentioned it earlier, why Eberron?
Oh, how long have you got?
Oh, I mean, like I said, we're here for an hour, so I mean,
so another half an hour. Okay, why Eberron? That is, I think personally, Eberron is pretty much everything I want out of a predefined campaign setting. So I think it just mostly, and I think that probably the most important thing about Eberron that makes it compelling is the sort of the big picture fits together in a coherent and interesting way. And what I kind of mean by that is that the world feels like an interwoven space that interacts with itself as well as with the players, which makes it a great backdrop. So what I'm thinking about in terms of stuff like that is that you have the 5 nations, for example, are sort of the core of the Eberron campaign setting. So on the main continent, you have 5 main countries, each of which have been at war with each other for 100 years after they broke up from being one large empire. and one of them was completely and utterly destroyed. There are 4 left. They sued for peace because, oh my God, what destroyed the other one?
Yeah.
So that sets up a world that is immediately clear in how a sort of a player character interacts, not just with the sort of the space they're in, the sort of character levels. So you're thinking about your village or city where you grew up, or your family or your friends. But also it tells you a lot about what to expect when you look across the other end of the world. So, for example, if you start your campaign in somewhere like Shan, which is the famous city of towers, and probably the setting for about 80% of everyone's adventures, then you can take a character who's grown up in Shan, and if you go to, say, Karnath on the opposite side of the continent, your players have very clear hooks in how they should or might want to act.
Mm-hmm.
So, and those hooks can be explained very quickly. So you can say, you and your people and your family and your friends have been at war with this country for 100 years. They're famous for necromancy. You probably hate their guts.
Yeah.
Or maybe you've grown to kind of feel an empathy because you're all the victims of war. So, yeah, I find that interconnectedness very compelling. And
no, so just sorry, just to sort of hear you talk about Sophia, is naturally I draw parallels between your description of it and my understanding of the Forgotten Realms, and it feels almost like the focus of the Forgotten Realms of Faerun as a whole to then focus so much on the Sword Coast. It feels like Eberron has kind of scoped out the entire world in enough to kind of cover, like, to offer more from the get-go. Like, it's easier to understand like the limits, or like the how wide the world is. Just because I think you kind of have to really go out your way when sort of engaging with the Forgotten Realms to know all the different continents which aren't necessarily covered in the hardback cooks or the setting guides. If that sort of makes sense, as well as like the unique sort of elements that Eberron brings.
No, I think that makes sense. And yeah, I mean, you could pick the example of, say, you look across the ocean from Corvair, which is the main continent in Eberron, at least as far as most stories are concerned, to Salona, which in some ways is, you could look at it where this is where psionics is. We can, if we want to, shuffle that off and forget about it. But there's a lot of rich history connecting that continent to Eberron's that feels natural and interesting. Like, for example, it's where humans first came from. So, it's the
it's sort of like story hooks all over the place. It's easy to
exactly. And that's even, as you say, that even comes before all the kind of the fun Eberron magic and aesthetic and questions about, I don't know, Warforged and everyday magic and everything. That's also a lot of fun.
Like dragon marks and all that.
Oh yeah, dragon marks, Warforged, the planes. Oh yeah,
no, so
go on.
I must admit, so in all my in all the chances I've had to sort of speak to people who like enjoy Eberron and create content for Eberron, that I think the one consistent is everyone is very passionate about Eberron, and they speak highly of like the community that's kind of behind them. Just because it seems like it's like a subsection of the DMsGuild that is just like so tightly knit in their love, or like together in their love for Eberron, that they just always knock it out the park when it comes to like creating content.
Yeah, there's certainly a lot of very enthusiastic folks.
Like I said, I think in my head, when I was saying, I was like, you need to say passionate and not fanatical. I think you want to be polite and stuff like that. I was like, yeah, no, I should be nice. But no, like I said, I think I said before that I have like some Eberron content I do want to write. But I'm 90% sure that once I do write it, I may never come out of Eberron. I think this is like, the one foot into the portal.
Yeah.
Nice. No, awesome. That was really good. So I guess to sort of bring it almost, well, not to bring it out of Eberron because we're talking about your stuff, but to talk about your creative process as a whole.
Yes.
Where do you like, where do your ideas come from? So the products that you weren't sort of like involved in a collaboration for, the ones like the stat blocks or anything, just where did the idea start?
Ooh, I always find that's such a big question, because I think when talking about inspiration, I struggle to kind of pinpoint like a single source. So I suppose that's a bit of a cop out, but it comes from sort of just consuming media. You see a TV show, you play a game, or you play another D&D game or a different RPG, and it just kind of plants seeds in your brain, and you think, I wonder how I could do this for for D&D or for whatever role-playing system you want to create for.
Yeah.
So you start with that, you think, I'm trying to think some of the more obvious examples. I think there's from my own stuff, I'm thinking about there's a monster in the one of the bestiaries I made. It's Codex, the Codex Severus 1, I think it's in, called an Ether Claw. That one was one of the older ones I came in from the 3.5 edition and then transported back. But I always remember that I thought about that one just from playing, I think it was playing Halo and watching the Alien movie in the same, space of time.
Yeah.
Thought, okay, so you've got this, how do you do a kind of parasitic horror zombie aberration for Eberron, and and then you build on that and you iterate, and it kind of drifts away into its own thing.
Yeah. And I was gonna say, so did you ever feel like, obviously when you were doing like a creature a week, essentially, did you feel any sort of like the pressure? I always like, it's like sometimes like being under pressure allows you to be more creative, like working within a restraint. When it came like week in, week out, were you still sort of pulling from like, video games and other stuff? Or were there other times where you're just like, oh, I have the next few weeks kind of plotted out here?
I would like to tell you, yes, I was very organized and I had things ready to go.
Yeah.
But absolutely not. No, I think more often than not, particularly when I was doing the weekly ones, it was like, oh, what am I going to do? What am I going to do?
Yeah.
Oh, I know. I saw this thing. I wonder how it could work. And before you know it, you've spent half an hour making a monster. And that's the thing is as well, when you've got the kind of the dual combination of the sort of the time pressure and having to do it frequently is you throw a lot of spaghetti at the wall and only some of it will stick.
Yeah.
So, I can look back at my old archives and say, oh, what was I even? No. I put it on a forum in 2005, but I don't need to put it in my, bestiary in 2020 or whatever, because it was a stupid idea then. But, you create by iterating, I think, and just trying. You just do. You just do a lot of doing. And I think that's not just true of monsters. And I don't know, I've got so many sort of Google Docs half open thinking, start making a subclass or start making start jotting down some adventure ideas. Thought, this is really cool. And then you think, maybe this isn't so great, but you learn a lesson out of that. And the next time you come to make something, maybe you'll remember that draft you did and abandoned. Actually, maybe I could bring that, repurpose that and turn it into something good.
I think what is it? Everyone has the sort of like, however it takes it, the ideas document, or the ideas document / graveyard, depending on your where it's just like a list of like, and sometimes I do regret past me being so bad at sort of taking notes, where I'm just like, goblin cannon. I wish I knew what that meant. I feel like there's 3 exclamation parts after it, so I was clearly excited about the idea. It's just, what can I do with this? No, okay. Well, then, so taking that like kind of step further, then, is there like a part of a project, like whether it comes to like subclasses, adventures, or like creatures, like what is your favorite part?
Favorite part? Ooh, I think. I think that there's an element. Well, I think this. Can I say the start and the finish, and we'll ignore all the middle? I think that the really. I think one of the most fun parts is that kind of stage of just throwing around ideas and seeing what works. So, like you were saying, you can feel that you can get a little bit silly and see what happens. You can write Goblin Cannon and start out. It's a large construct. What could it do? How do I make it feel cannon-y? I don't know. What does it mean to throw a goblin out of an explosive device anyway?
I don't want to know how it feels like for a goblin.
Probably not all that great.
I can imagine it's short-lived, but very painful.
So I think that kind of early stage of trying to identify, sort of like hacking away an idea to draw out that really flavorful nuggets.
Yeah, the punch.
And to turn it into a mechanic is where like not a huge part of the fun is. Because I think that's one thing I like to make sure in designs for mechanics, if not necessarily for adventures too, actually, is I want to find something that couldn't just be done by reflavoring, some other mechanic. If I want to make a CR2 humanoid who is a warrior, and I want to put my spin on it with this really cool idea, I want to find that little nugget that means someone else or me, if I want to run this, wants to pick that stat block instead of just saying, I'll just pick the hobgoblin captain and just say it's this thing. So that's the really fun section of design, I think. And the middle part is when you've got to build on that and iterate on it, the play testing as well, and all this, which is fun as well. But the ideas section is
so
cool.
But then you also mentioned that you quite like the end, and I feel like I've had a few people come in and say how the almost like the last 5% is like the slog. That's like the worst part for them. Is it like No, I was going to say, go on.
Yeah, no, I understand what they mean. I think there's that the last 10%, as you say, is quite tiring, because in some ways it's when you've got to be the most critical of yourself or allow others to be critical of it. So it can feel slow and sometimes demoralizing, but it's that last jump when you say, right, this is done. And you look at a stat block or a page of your layout or something like that, and you think, here is the thing. It's like stepping back from a canvas when you're painting a painting and you see, it's done. Yeah. And then you keep stepping back because you don't want to step forward and look at all the strokes you've done wrong or something. Oh no! Yeah. Oh, what have I done?
Yeah, I think with it. So sometimes in the sort of getting feedback and playtesting, it does feel like you've stepped away, and then someone sort of comes into the room and says, "By the way, that head is upside down," and then you go, "Oh right, yes," and then you can step back again. It feels like there's a few times of leaning forward and stepping back, or getting someone to turn the whole canvas around.
Yeah.
But no, interesting, and yeah, no, I think again, the start of every project is always quite exciting, and again, to stick with the metaphor of like a canvas, it is that sort of like that blank Google sheet. It's like infinite possibilities, and I think I kind of like I share your mindset when it comes to like writing things about having like, I guess almost like that iconic mechanic, or something that like, you know, is unique, or something that, you know, players can actually gravitate towards to have that, you know, nice peak.
Yeah.
You know, if it was just another hobgoblin captain, it wouldn't be the same as players encountering something that they don't know how to face. You know, it's not just something that, having played D&D for, you know, X number of years, they have like stat blocks ingrained into their mind. It's just, you know, you want to surprise people, and you know, there's a plethora of ways that you can do that through like stat blocks, the setting, the mechanics of the setting, or even with like, you know, subclasses, which I've dipped my toe in like once or twice, but I don't think it's quite for me.
That's fair enough.
So I guess then, to flip the coin around then. So if starting and ending a project is your favorite part, are there any sort of parts of a project that you don't necessarily enjoy as much, aside from the middle?
Preempt that.
Yeah.
I think like it makes a lot of sense to me. What you were saying earlier, and it's that stage where you think you've put together something that you're quite happy with, and you give it to someone else to look at. And even though, you know, no matter how much confidence you have in something you've put together, there's, you know, you always want someone to come back with thoughts, and often the most useful ones are the critical ones. But you know, you still like, you give something to someone, and you want to see their eyes sparkle, and you say, "Oh my God, this is amazing! I love it. Publish as is," and you think, done it again.
Yeah. I think that the day that I get that, like, my work back from an editor and they go, "Perfect, publish as is," I'll be like, "Am I? You're playing a trick on me, right? This gotta be happening. This
never happens."
But no, the feedback process, like whether it is with the editor or like the playtesters, it can be challenging, because I guess it's the idea of like, you know, it's your baby, and sometimes it is easier to go through and like, even if like the editor has given you like positive feedback interspliced between, like, you know, the suggestions for improvements. It's like the thing of like, you see what's broken first, and that kind of yells a little bit louder than this was a really nice sentence.
No, for sure. And I think, like, especially because that process is so important and so necessary, and it's you know, the last thing I want to do is give the impression that I don't want you know, that you don't want an editor, or you don't want someone else to look at your thing, because there's the tip for, you know, anyone who definitely wants to do any design to kind of put on the DMsGuild sort of thing, is that you absolutely do need to get an editor and playtesters and things.
I mean, so funny enough, I mean, I think that sentiment has been echoed so many times in this podcast that it is something of a motto. I think, like, I need to, like, if I was to ever do like a t-shirt line, that would be my first thing. Is just like, get an editor. You just get like step one. Don't even think. Just like, again. And I think it's hard not to, like, again, for there's a few things that when I think a lot of people did when they sort of first like joined the DMsGuild. Typically, your first product doesn't necessarily have an editor. Typically, it's pay what you want. And sometimes there's a third one where the first product you put on doesn't have the DMsGuild logo on it. And then you're politely reminded in the emails that you kind of need one of those. But
it reminds me of I had a terrible mistake one time when I tried to do an update on the Warlocks of Eberron. So that was
Mhm.
my first project, and ended up removing all of the files.
Oh,
So,
no.
people would come to, paid, for these subclasses, and there's nothing in it. I was like, oh no. So I, got the email from the DMsGuild saying, I think you've done something wrong here.
Yeah, it's
And I was
not
like, I was so embarrassed.
you weren't trying to, yeah. If fairness, again, I've the one time that I've had them come forward with saying, hey, you kind of need like this logo on your cover, or that they are everyone's delightful and stuff like that. It's just hard not to feel horribly embarrassed throughout.
Yeah. So I suppose there's another tip for people who want to do more of this stuff, is that you will make mistakes, and that's okay, because mistakes happen.
And eventually once you have like a large catalog of products, or just like a few things out there, it does get hard to look at your first ones out there and stuff like that, because you I don't know, it's just the speed at which people improve in this, or just like the night and day difference between like your first product and your third, or it's just, I suppose it's the impact of like collaboration and just developing those sort of skills. Well, no, that's good. Okay, cool. You kind of touched on like two really good tips, but my next question is then, is there any sort of particular lesson that you kind of wish you learned earlier?
Particular lesson. So I've already said get an editor.
Yeah. sorry.
No,
if that was the big one.
That's an easy one in the bank. I think one of the lessons is that I would very strongly encourage people to get involved with collaboration. And I don't necessarily mean just an author plus an editor and maybe a layout artist or something, although that is absolutely a really good way to work. But I think it's also just it's really rewarding to build something with someone else, and it can give you as well the confidence to push yourself a little more, to try something you haven't necessarily done before. And that was one of the huge strengths in, say, across Eberron, where a lot of the people involved hadn't tried adventure writing or adventure paths before, or we hadn't produced adventure path before. But it all comes together, and the more expertise or just the more ideas you have, the better you can make the whole. And then you learn lessons from other people, by accident or on purpose. And so I think, work on your solo projects. Solo projects are great fun, but and they're a different kind of thing. So when you're doing collaborations, but even if it's just opening up a dock with someone and throwing around a few magic items or monsters and saying, hey, let's do a little jazz. I don't know.
It feels like there's almost like a spectrum of like collaborations where like even a solo project, like if as like to the idea of like always get an editor, a solo project isn't necessarily a solo project, because if you do have a layout artist and an editor involved, it's a solo in the sense that like there's only one designer, and editors can they can be a developmental editor and stuff like that. So it's like who's writing the bulk of the words, and then you have the sort of like the collaborations, which are just like what's the term for it? Essentially, like a bunch of individual one shots, like a compendium, where people kind of they write their own stuff and then they sort of merge it all into one document. But then I must admit, I think I haven't worked on as many that sort of like collaborations where it is one document that like you have, I don't know, 3 sections, and you go, you write section 1, you write section 2, you write section 3, and then you have that sort of ongoing discussion. And I've started a few recently, and they're just feel just more rewarding and more enriching, just to sort of have that sort of back and forth conversation about just an adventure idea. And especially as well when it comes away of like it not being like a collaboration, not being like, okay, well, it's like 50-50 with someone, like where it's both people have equal contribution, and it just better ideas stem from it. It's I think it's having one really good collaboration like that kind of shapes the way you do future collaborations, because I don't think I'm going to necessarily go back if I can help it.
Well, yeah, no, it's even if you decide you prefer solo projects, you'll come away from a collaboration with new ideas, new techniques, new lessons. So there's, even if it turns out to fall apart because you find you can't work with someone or something in the worst case scenario, I think you're still going to come away having experiences that are going to improve the next thing you make.
And I must admit, I've had the pleasure of working with like a whole swath of different editors, and I've all of them have been fairly positive. But it's interesting as well, like the different relationships you have with different editors, and just learning how they work. And you build up this huge network of like people to go to, and then you kind of learn their strengths and weaknesses for like, oh, maybe this would be a good project for X or Y, or No, awesome. No, that's again. So again, I got a little bit rambly there. I apologize.
We're here to ramble, aren't we?
Well, yeah. I suppose like I could play this is my podcast. But it's what is it? So this is not a chair that I'm sat on. It's actually just a soapbox, and this is where I get my sort of like rambling out. I'm not allowed out in public anymore because it's just too busy yelling about D&D. But to be, again, a segue into a slightly more professional topic, do you have any particular sort of like dream projects, or like, obviously you mentioned that Across Eberron season 2 is coming, which I imagine is like exciting to be involved in. But what about like, is there going to be like another codex? Is it
Sybaris? There's a joke in the Eberron community that nothing is ever pronounced the same. So I mean, try to get someone pronounced Seer or Siri or Sire.
I can't remember. Does everyone have like a pronunciation guide in like the front or back somewhere?
Explicitly does not.
Oh,
so,
no. That could be a DMsGuild project in itself. Just
well, that's the thing is, I think some of the designers, I know Keith Baker, the setting creator in general, is quite fond of the idea of just embracing everyone's personal thing, and it'll be like in the real world where people pronounce words differently because they're from different places.
That's true. That's kind of a really nice sort of like a sort of mechanical or like thematic excuse for not having one. But sorry, you're saying about your a dream project.
Dream projects. Okay, yeah. So Across Eberron season 2. Is the obvious choice. I think there's that is, well, it's not really even in pre-production yet, so it may be a while yet. But
is it just because the kind of everybody's kind of waiting for the most recent Eberron book to drop, I imagine.
Yeah. So we share a lot of the team on the editing team with the Across Eberron book. Which is a huge project that is, just finished. Sort of, it's the work in the pipeline, so that's going to be out soon. But once that's out, and once the people involved have had a bit of a rest, R&R, then we'll start thinking about how we want to turn some of the ideas that have been jotting down into Google Docs documents into a real outline. So, as we've learned a lot about how to do this from when we were doing season 1, both on the adventure writing side and on the production side. So, I'm really excited about what's going to turn out with that when we start. So
I guess so if you had the choice, would you want to be sort of season 2 episode 1?
Ooh. Well, I know. I think it's someone else's turn to kick off.
Yeah.
We've got so many talented writers involved across Eberron, and I was thrilled and honored to be episode 1 in the first one. But yeah, maybe it's time to give someone else the episode 1 spotlight.
That's a very honourable and graceful answer. I realised the moment I asked it, it's like, oh no, this is almost like a gotcha question. I'm like, no, it's my crown. I will.
No, yeah.
I will be first forever.
Yeah.
No, and interesting. And you kind of mentioned, that there's a whole host of very sort of creative individuals, involved in the Cross Eberron and the Eberron community as a whole. But is there anyone in particular, actually, funnily enough, if we sort of single out the Eberron community, is there anyone that particularly inspires you?
Oh, definitely. I came prepared, ready to say Laura Hersbrenner.
Nice.
And I don't know if anyone else will have said her yet, but she's undoubtedly a force to be reckoned with in the Eberron community, I think. So she's been involved in, she's the editor on Exploring Eberron, working with Keith Baker and Wayne Chang on that, and Will Brawley. But also she's one of the editors, now the editor-in-chief in the Across Eberron series. And she's been involved in several other projects as editor. I think the kind of
I was going to say the idea of it's hire an editor asterisk, where the asterisk is if Eberron ask go to Laura. Please. She's probably insanely busy, but I mean I can't think of anyone.
Reason.
Yeah.
Yeah. But she really has she's a lovely person, wonderful person, and I'm privileged to know her. And she is very dedicated to the projects that she's working on, and she's a wonderful editor. Yeah, rep her. Hire Laura, she's great.
Maybe that needs to be another T-shirt in itself. I like that question. It gives me the warm fuzzies of just everyone's so lovely.
We love each other. Yeah, I mean that's the other good thing about collaborations. Collaborations again is you make friends, and sometimes that's better than having guild projects together. You get some good friends along the way.
Ongoing sort of people to sort of lift each other up outside of also it's more potential players for a D&D get together and play D&D.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, awesome. And then moving kind of along with the questions then is there anything that you can kind of spoil that you're working on at the moment or?
Oh, I would love to. I've got 2 projects that are sort of in the final editing phase. So hopefully they won't be too far along in dropping. The first is a huge Eberron adventure that I've been working on for so long. It's called Escape from Riedra. And it is a what is it now, 60-page long module about it's in the title, about Riedra, which is an empire from across the ocean in Salona, which is a psionic sort of repressive culture where they use psionic powers to make everyone do what they tell them, essentially, and manipulate everyone's dreams. And it's all very creepy and fun like that. So it's an adventure where you can bring in your characters from Corvair and go and save someone and bring them out of this psychic hellscape. So
so when you mentioned that it's 60 pages, is this like a multi-level spanning? Is this what sort of tier of play is it, or is it quite flexible?
So it's built for 7th level. So it's pretty good across what's that tier 2. So I don't know whether it would. You could push it over a couple of levels. It depends what you like to do with your leveling speed, but it's sort of intended as you would probably get one good level out of it over a campaign that lasted as on the order of 6 sessions or so.
Well,
so yeah, kind of that medium.
Yeah, this is like a hefty little.
Yeah. And I'm really excited about that because, I kind of ran it for the first time. Was it like a year and a half ago? And kind of parked it. I was thinking, I'm going to write this up one day, and then a few months ago, I had the time and wrote it up, and I was like, yeah, here we go, it's happening. I've just got the art orders through, and they look amazing. And
then when you did the sort of the first write up, was it still sort of 60 pages in the first write up, or was it that sort of iterative that it kind of grew and grew and grew?
Yeah, it's sort of grown and grown. I don't think I imagined it would be that big. It sort of started out as I think, you could run this as a one shot.
Yeah.
And then by the time we started throwing playtesters at it, you realize there's so much I could put in this. And you start expanding, throwing bits into the document, and then it's like tending a garden or something. You go over there and you fix up this bit, and you go over here and you fix up this bit, and before you know it, it's huge.
And then you mentioned, what is it? There's a second product potentially dropping.
There is a second one. Yeah. Okay. The second one is exceptionally silly. Well, not exceptionally so, but it's a little bit wackier. And it started out. So the title is called Bag of Holding Monsters.
Oh.
It is a what's the word? A love letter to my two favorite IPs, crammed into one and mushed together and thrown out as something else. So this is Eberron meets Pokemon. And it's a bestiary of how many is it? 28 different monsters and some mechanics for magic items and such to support the idea of, okay, what if I take each of these nations of Eberron or these regions or these concepts and turn them into a Pokemon? I started doing this as just kind of an art practice drawing thing, and I got to the end and said, right, I'm going to turn this into a D&D project. So,
I mean, I suppose that is the classic case of like once you finish things nowadays, it is like, I mean, this could be a D&D product. It's like,
right.
It's just like, wow, I've put the effort in. It's only a little bit more now.
Yeah. So, I drew a bunch of monsters in a Pokemon art style. They're inspired by Eberron, and now you can fight them.
No, I must admit, so here's the thing, I think like that's what's great about the DMsGuild. Like there is like, you can, like, what was it, there's the Scooby-Doo inspired adventure recently happened.
Yes.
Guild recently.
Yes.
There's countless sort of wacky things. So I think it's great. Again, it's the sort of thing that people like, in the same way that people come to a table and just like, I would like to play as RoboCop or whatever it is. Yeah. There'll be people who are just like, let's try and get Pokemon in here. Let's, and there's like, oh, you like Pokemon, but only of Eberron kind. Well, have I got the product for you?
Yeah. Yes. There are some kind of like type chart tables in there, and some rules for catching monsters inside your bag of holding to use against people later.
Goblin friendly? Can we get a goblin in the bag?
Oh, so there are two bag of holding monsters in inverted commas related to Dargoon, which is the Eberron nation of goblins. So yes, there is a goblin monster, 2 of them that you can catch and throw at your friends.
Goblin Cannon lives on.
Yes, finally.
I feel like that's a good note to end on. So, Imogen, thank you so much for taking the time to have this chat. This has been amazing. I love the chance to sort of
great fun. Thank you for having me.
With people. If people if they want to hear about these 2 projects that are on the cusp of coming out, what's the best way for them to sort of hear about your work?
So I'll certainly be tweeting about it. So at IL Gingell, that's Imogen Louise Gingell, just with the initials. You can also look at the Tumblr if you want some more previews, especially of the Pokemon stuff. That's dragon-above.tumblr.com. Yeah, I think those are the best two ways. Otherwise, or you could join the Eberron Discord group and
nice.
Be part of that community, because I'm there far too often.
Well,
all the time.
Yeah. And once you join, you never leave. I think that's
exactly. Join us.
But no, well, I'll make sure that in the podcast description there's a link to all your DM's Guild products, and I'll offer a link to the Dragon Above Tumblr page, because I think it was funny enough. As I was doing my research, I was like, oh, these look a lot like Pokemon, and now I know the context for where to find them.
Yeah.
But no, again, thank you so much. I do have the very last question then is, how do you end a podcast?
That is. Ooh.
I know this is like meta, and like sort of like the extra planar in its weight.
Oh yeah. How do I end a podcast? Apparently it's by panicking.
I say that's probably a good way. I could probably take it from there as the idea of like, just I've been Matthew Whitby. Please come back next week. Otherwise I want to get to 1 year. I don't want to stop at halfway. And if you're not here next week, then it doesn't really work out so well. So it's like a plead, please. Please.